First topic here. Sony, their financials, all that type of stuff that came out. Well, we saw it. I mean, if you were on Twitter, there was a lot of hilarious. I pissed off a few people on Twitter on Friday, um, basically saying if PlayStation should raise the price of the PS5 because we know that their fans and their fanboys will be okay with that. They'll pay it and they will celebrate paying it. No, I didn't say it in those words, but yeah, pissed off some people on Twitter. Which, you know what, I don't generally get into the console war stuff on Twitter, but sometimes you just got to troll and make some jokes, and it's funny how serious people take it. But yeah, they put out their financial reports. This is a report from The Verge saying Sony warns of weaker PlayStation business as game sales wobble, which, I mean, I'm not surprised whatsoever that everything in gaming has been down. It was down on the Xbox side, but it's down even more on the PlayStation side. So they say here, Sony has cut its annual profit outlook, warning of weaker PlayStation game sales. The forecast comes as Sony revealed it shipped 2.4 million PlayStation 5 consoles in its recent quarter, up only 4% from 2.3 million shipped during the same period last year. And PS5 has reached lifetime shipments of 21.7 million, which it's doing great. I mean, they're still selling a lot. They're obviously having issues with their supply chain and getting enough consoles out there to meet the demand. But if we just take a quick look here, I mean, this is really the only source that we have that we can go off at a quick glimpse to see what the actual estimated sales numbers are. Because, you know, VG Charts, they have been known for not being the best, but they have definitely turned it around, I would say, in the last little while. They have the guy who's taken over there on Twitter, who has expressed just how they're taking it more seriously and they're making sure that they're kind of vetting their numbers. We have here, and you can't compete with the Nintendo Switch. It's crazy, the Nintendo Switch, how well it still sells. And it's right there an example of, like, you don't... 110 million. They're still selling. It's been out since 2017. And the sales, like, you think about Breath of the Wild 2 coming out next year, the sales aren't going to slow down for the Nintendo Switch. They're only going to continue to do well. So it'll be interesting to see how long it takes for them to put out their new Nintendo Switch 2 or whatever their next platform is going to be, or if they're going to just continue to really try to bleed the Switch dry like they did with the 3DS. I foresee them doing that. If they can continue to get third-party publishers and third-party developers to put their games on the platform, I think they're going to continue to do that. But anyways, the Nintendo Switch, 110 million units so far. But we look here at the PS5, we look here at the Xbox Series S, X. They're about 5 to 6 million units apart from each other. I mean, it's not a big difference. And in a generation where the actual console sales themselves is particularly for Xbox and for PlayStation soon, because you can see them completely just copying Xbox and going in the same direction as they are with their ecosystem. The hardware sales themselves, they don't matter as much as they used to. They really don't, like what they did with the Xbox One and the Xbox 360. It's the ecosystem right now. But the fact that Xbox has a booming subscription service with Xbox Game Pass, which is the leader and is going to be the leader for a foreseeable future. It's going to be like that Netflix where they're the first in, they've done it the best. They're going to have competition, but the competition is always going to be trying to catch up to them. They're still doing extremely well just on their hardware sales alone. And all those narratives before these consoles release that you need console exclusives to sell your box, that putting Xbox first-party games onto PC as well as Xbox is going to cannibalize their console sales. All of those narratives that were created absolutely destroyed so far this generation, and they will continue to be destroyed, because the one thing people always seem to forget when they talk about console exclusivity is that the majority of people don't even play first-party games. They buy a console to play third-party games with their buddies. They buy a console to play the Call of Duties, to play the Maddens, to play the Apex Legends, the FIFAs, that type of, literally that's like majority of the people purchasing consoles is what they do. And obviously we're seeing that play out right now with the sales and everything. But yeah, so 21.7 million for PS5, and Xbox is right there behind them. But with all of those numbers, they say here hardware sales are slightly up year over year. Software sales have plummeted 26%. 26%. In an investor call, Sony blamed the game slump on a lack of big PlayStation titles this year compared to 2021 and less time spent playing games in general. So I guess according to Sony, Grand Theft Auto 7 and Horizon Forbidden West are not big PlayStation titles. So that tells me two things. As much as people hype up those types of games, people don't play them. People don't buy them and play them nearly enough to help them increase their sales numbers for their software sales. I mean, essentially, Horizon Forbidden West, a massive game, right? Came out February? Grand Theft Auto 7, Grand Theft Auto, a huge franchise, been around forever. I mean, I remember back on like the PS1, you would think that would be boosting a ton of people going out and playing the game. We know Grand Theft Auto 7 had a huge like debacle with its release with the microtransactions, and the game just wasn't where a lot of people wanted it to be, but it's still, I think, sold okay. They're still down 26%. And you think about 2021, what came out in 2021? Spider-Man Miles Morales came out in 2020. That was a launch game, right? What even came out in 2021 for PS5? I can't even remember that right now. 2021 PS5 launch games. Ratchet and Clank, right? In June? Is that what came out? Demon Souls, that was a launch game, right? That was a 2020 release. Someone's got to remind me here, but 2021. Okay. I think it was like Ratchet and Clank. That was pretty much it. I don't know. What else was out in 2021? Anyways, let me know in the chat what it is. But like Ratchet and Clank was the big one out in 2021 for PlayStation 5. And I guess you could say arguably 2022 has had bigger games, and they've had more than 2021. So I don't know. I don't understand. What is this? PS5 exclusive. Every game released and confirmed so far. Okay. So we have this. You got Demon Souls. This is PS5 launch game. Destruction Altars, PS5 launch game. Ratchet and Clank was 2021. Returnal. Okay, Returnal was another one, but I don't think that one is nearly as big as a Horizon Forbidden West or Gran Turismo 7. Spider-Man, remastered, okay. Yeah. I guess that's it. I guess I'm drawing a blank because I can't think of anything else. But let me know in the chat. Well, I'll get to the comments after the segment, and I'll see if you guys can remind me of any of that stuff. But yeah, I would say Horizon Forbidden West and Gran Turismo 7 are two massive games. So saying that there's no big PlayStation titles this year compared to 2021, I don't know. It pretty much is just saying that the PlayStation gamers, like what I said at the beginning, first party content isn't the biggest thing out there. People use your platform to play everything on it, and third party is much, much bigger, which is, a known thing, which again goes back to it destroys that narrative that you need a console exclusive in order to push and sell the console. But continues on here and say, backed up by monthly active PlayStation Network users dropping 3% to 102 million, which is interesting as well because they released the PlayStation Plus, and you would think that with that new service, you have to sign up for the PlayStation Network. The users would increase. And they say your Sony released Gran Turismo 7, Horizon Forbidden West early this year, of course. But Elden Ring, they're blaming it on Elden Ring. Elden Ring arrived at the same time across multiple platforms and stole the limelight. So yeah, Elden Ring was huge. No matter what platform, it was the best selling. It was the biggest game. It's going to win Game of the Year. It's a great, incredible feat in video games. And I'm all 100% agree with all the takes on Elden Ring. It is that good. So yeah, it is the game of 2022, and people are going to be talking about Elden Ring for a very, very long time. But if you're pushing a platform and the main thing you're pushing to get people into your platform is your first party titles, it's not really an excuse to use Elden Ring or anything like that as to why the software is down. Reuters reports that Sony has now revised its annual profit forecast down 16% for its gaming business as it anticipates another fall in game sales next quarter, alongside costs associated with its recent $3.7 billion Bungie acquisition. So this here is, I find this part interesting because to me this isn't surprising. Like if you were sitting and watching the video game industry since I would say about 2017 to about now, when Xbox released the Xbox One X and they released Xbox Game Pass, and you started to see that pick up steam, and as more subscribers come onto the service, and where it was going with like cloud gaming and all of that type of stuff, going into this generation, there must have been people at Sony that were saying, hey, we got to start making that transition over to the subscription, over to the cloud gaming type of stuff, opening up our ecosystem, because we're not going to be able to keep up with our profits, with our forecasts, all that type of stuff. The investors are going to want to see us making more money. We're not going to be able to make as much money as we could make if we had a subscription service that was booming, such as what's going on in other parts of the industry, particularly, I mean, Xbox Game Pass, which is doing very well. And there must have been somebody in there before they released the PS5, but they still went ahead and they just kind of ignored all of that and released the PS5 on the premise that you're going to want to buy this console. You're going to have to buy this console to play all of our first party content, which clearly right now, as we're seeing it, is not paying off with what they're doing. One, obviously, chip shortages, which if you go down further here, they talk about, kind of been fixed now. It's not really about a chip shortage, but the supply chain issue is having problems. I mean, the pandemic played into that. No one can deny that. I mean, that has a role in it. But they're literally just not able to meet the demand of the amount of people that want a PlayStation. And the best way to offset that is to give people access in more ways than one, which is what Xbox had been planning since 2017. I mean, when they released Game Pass in 2017, they were planning for the next generation. That was just like their, I would say, beta of getting people used to the idea that you're going to have a subscription service where you pay a monthly fee and you get tons of content, and to see if it was going to be able to take to the market. And obviously it did. So it's PlayStation's behind right now in terms of the business aspect of video games, in my opinion. They are, and it's going to take them a while to catch up. We're seeing them start to do that with Bungie. Like the acquisition of Bungie, great acquisition for Sony. You're going to see that really help their profits going forward with how popular Destiny is, the amount of microtransactions in there, and whatever Bungie puts out in the future. Bungie is an incredible developer. The games, the quality, the gameplay, everything like that Bungie puts out is great, and you can't really deny that. So the purchase of Bungie was a very, very smart move by Sony, but you're not going to see the payoff of that until next year or whenever their next financial report is. But they're clearly moving, like they've mentioned it. They're trying to put out like 10 games as a service by 2026. They're clearly moving in that direction. I just honestly think that I'm just kind of flabbergasted by the fact that Sony took so long to make this move and that they're doing it now. I feel like they could have waited just a little bit too long, and I feel like going forward in the long run, they are going to be continuously behind Xbox in this regard just because of how long they took to make that move. They could have easily launched the PS5 with a robust subscription service and started for the last 2 years building that subscription service. Then what they did recently, announced the acquisition of Bungie, which would have gotten people even more excited for the subscription service while already adding value and content in there, creating that goodwill for it, which Xbox has been doing since 2017, but they just decided to ignore it, which to me, I don't know, from a armchair analysis, it was kind of bewildering to see them do that. And you saw people still pushing the narrative that, oh no, they're fine, the console exclusivity stuff is all they need, which obviously isn't the case from a business perspective, in my humbled opinion. Sony's PlayStation, continue on here. Sony's PlayStation game sales are the latest sign that the gaming industry is slowing down after a big boost during the initial stages of the pandemic. Of course, Microsoft doesn't reveal its own Xbox hardware shipments, but the company saw Xbox hardware revenue dip 11%. We talked about that in the video earlier this week. It has fallen, as well as a 6% drop in their content and services revenues, and a 7% decline in overall gaming revenues. 7% decline versus 16% for Sony in their gaming business. But in that report as well, they were saying that a lot of this is being offset by Xbox Game Pass, which again, clear indicator that that's the way of the future for video games. You're going to see a lot of companies going that way, where they can put out avenues to enter the subscription service. And if they're declining in revenue in a certain period because, there's things going on in the world, they can offset that with the subscribers. So Microsoft had a strong fiscal year for Xbox revenue. I believe it was their best fiscal year in history, which I mean is saying a decent amount, from especially with how strong the Xbox 360 era was. One thing about the 360 eras was the Red Ring of Death, which was like a 50% failure rate. I never had one, which is crazy to think about. Imagine if they didn't have the Red Ring of Death, how much stronger that generation would have been for them. That definitely took a huge hit on their revenues, on their profits, and on the amount of people wanting to buy a 360 for a period of time until they released that slim version, which pretty much solved all the issues. And they're also warning of gaming revenue and Xbox content services revenue will both decline next quarter. Yeah, I mean, they're getting their investors ready that, hey, you're not going to see an increase next quarter either. It's going to be a while with that type of stuff, with the hardware and the content and services, which, I mean, once they start releasing like Starfield and Redfall, I think you'll start seeing more that, I don't know, maybe not. I think there'll be a huge increase with Game Pass for sure. A lot of people will be buying Starfield and Redfall on Xbox and on PC, but will it be enough to offset the fiscal year or the decline in content and services? From what we understand right now, no, probably not. Just because more, like I said, more people play third-party games on the platform. So it'll really depend on the entire landscape of the industry then. Sony previously forecasted 18 million PlayStation 5 shipments for its 2022 financial year, and the company hasn't revised those estimates yet. Supply, and this is what they say here, supply has not been sufficient. Demand has not gone down. We really need to meet the demand. This is the important thing to do. That's from the CFO, Hiroki Totoki. And there's nothing you can do if there's supply chain issues, if there's chip shortages to meet the demand. You just kind of have to wait to be able to do that. Sony now hopes hardware shipments will improve later this year, as it believes that it is mostly supply chain disruptions that are affecting the PS5 shipments rather than a lack of components. Sony will need to greatly improve its PS5 shipments to meet its 18 million annual projection. It needs to hit an average of more than 5 million PS5 shipments per quarter for the rest of the financial year, a target that's more than double this quarter's shipments. So we'll see how this works out. I don't know. If they shipped 2.4 million in this last quarter, what makes them think they're going to be able to ship another 2.6 million per quarter for the rest of their financial year? Which, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, especially if at the beginning they say up here that like games like Horizon Forbidden West or what did they say here? Slightly up over here, software sales plummeted 26%. Sony blamed the game slump on a lack of big PlayStation titles. So if they think that Horizon Forbidden West and Gran Turismo 7 aren't going to be able to push them to 5 million, I guess God of War Ragnarok will be a huge seller. But do they think The Last of Us remake will be able to help them get to 5 million? I hope not. If God of War Ragnarok, no problem. The Last of Us remake, if it sells extremely well, I think, like I said in my last week's episode, I think that's just bad. I think that's just bad for the industry from what we've seen so far from The Last of Us remake. As it's a cash grab. Like, it's a cash grab at the end of the day. I mean, we don't need to go over that again, but it's a cash grab, and they're cutting out 50% of the game with the multiplayer. So if it sells really well, I feel like it's going to be a sign to a lot of other developers and publishers out there that, hey, we can just kind of remake games that are not that old and make a huge profit off them because it takes less amount of effort to recreate these games, which is something that was I think was in a Bloomberg article or something like that, where Sony had literally decided not to make Uncharted 1 because it would be too much money and effort to recreate that game. So they'd rather just recreate The Last of Us Part 1 again and push it out, which is what they're doing. So we'll see how that one sells. I mean, September 2nd is just around the corner. I don't know. that's going to be really, really interesting. But if The Last of Us 2 right now is sold 2 million or 10 million since it's been released, we'll see if I think The Last of Us Part 1, more people like that game than they like The Last of Us Part 2. Essentially just from the story and everything, that all the leaks that came out and the anger around that when that happened. So, I mean, we'll see. It's a great game, but it's cash grab. While PlayStation game sales have dipped overall, 79% of PlayStation game sales were digital in the recent quarter, up 11% from year over year. So they're probably super happy about that. 79% of PlayStation game sales are digital because they're getting all the money from their store. And PlayStation game sales have been trending towards digital in recent years, of course, boosted by the pandemic and a digital-only version of the PS5. 80% is a big shift, yep. Sony's new PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium tiers launched in the US last month, but we won't know their full impact until next quarter. So that will be interesting to see how Extra and Premium affect their subscribers, how many more people subscribe to it, and what that's all about, and if it's successful or not. I think it will be. Honestly, I do think it will be. I think Extra and Premium are going to have some decent numbers. I think it'll be a positive in their next financial report because, like, I've gone through the extra tier. I've gone through. I don't have Premium, but I've gone through to see what's like kind of available on Premium. It's not that bad. I mean, it's not terrible. It's not on the same level as Xbox Game Pass, in my opinion. But there's definitely a lot of good games on there to play. And if they continue to do big things like, well, big things, I guess, with Stray, it's an indie game, which people, certain fanboys would always talk trash about indie games. But if they continue to put games on there that people want to just subscribe to play day one, it will grow. And they just literally got to follow the Xbox Game Pass model. And then they say PlayStation Plus subscribers are currently at 47.3 million, up from 46.3 million at the same point last year, but down from 48 million in fiscal year Q3 2021. Again, interesting, especially with, I guess they don't have the new tier numbers in there. And monthly active PlayStation Network users 102 million, which is down from 105 million year over year. So they have a lot of users in there that they're going to be able to try to convert over to PlayStation Plus. And I'm actually very interested to see what those numbers are all about. So at the end of the day, PlayStation's down. Their numbers are down. Their gaming revenue's down. They're clearly on the transition to games as a service, to subscription, to following essentially in the exact footsteps as what Xbox has been planning for since 2017 when they launched Xbox Game Pass, something that everyone saw coming except for the people that just wanted to continue to push the console exclusivity is still alive type of thing, which it isn't. It really isn't. Console exclusivity from a business perspective, as you can see what's going on in the industry, is not something that is profitable enough anymore for these companies. They're going to be moving over to subscription. They're moving over to the cloud, which is going to be the other big thing that Xbox has a huge advantage over. And that's where the industry is going. And these numbers here clearly prove it. So